The rain had turned to sleet by the time I reached the crumbling brownstone. Rust-streaked balconies, shattered windows patched with cardboard, a dead pigeon on the steps, the kind of place that once housed ambition and now reeked of rot. Not where I thought I'd return to after burying my grandfather. But then my mother never did care for sentiment. I wiped the fog from my glasses with the edge of my coat. 5th floor. Unit 5B. No elevator. The hallway buzzed with flickering fluorescent light. When I reached the door, I paused. Voices murmured inside. Tense. Measured. Controlled, like a room rehearsing grief instead of feeling it. Then I walked in. They were all seated like mannequins in a diorama of forced civility. My mother on the stained velvet couch, ankles crossed, her smile lacquered on like cheap gloss. My sister Ashley on the window ledge, wringing a damp tissue into knots. Matthew, my brother, hunched in the corner like he'd shrunk in on himself. And the strangers, 2 of them, in charcoal suits, pale hands folded over black briefcases. The air smelled like dust and cold coffee. No one stood. No one welcomed me. Richard, my mother said, voice dipped in sugar but dry at the core. You're late. I wasn't aware this required punctuality. She nodded to the 2 men. These are our family advisors. They didn't blink. Just turned to face me like predators studying an unfamiliar scent. One extended his hand. I let it hang there, ignored. I scanned the room. Ashley stared at her lap. Matthew picked at the frayed seam of his coat. My stepfather, Kevin, leaned against the radiator in a pressed blazer that didn't fit right, arms folded like a bouncer outside a bar no one wanted into. Coffee? My mother asked, already standing, already pouring. No, I said, taking the only intact chair near the broken TV. What's this about? She smiled again. That other smile, the one she used at charity auctions in fake apologies. Because we're family. And your grandfather would have wanted us to stay united. There it was, the lie, dressed in sentiment, offered like a poisoned truffle. This wasn't a meeting. It was a heist. A last-ditch bid to strip me of the only thing they hadn't managed to touch while Kenneth was alive, his legacy. They didn't know I'd come ready to bleed for it. My grandfather didn't build an empire so his daughter could torch it for handbags and spa weekends. He believed in sweat and numbers, in handshake deals, and showing up on time even if no one clapped. He started Vance Materials with 1 truck and a busted back, and by the time I was out of middle school, it was feeding half the construction crews in the tri-state area. He raised me on sawdust and spreadsheets. While Ashley cried over ruined nail polish and Matthew snuck comic books into his geometry binder, I was down at the yard learning to read balance sheets like scripture. I still remember the day he handed me my first real ledger, thick, heavy, sacred. Columns over crayons, kid, he said. Let's see what you're made of. I didn't blink. My mother never got it. Never tried. He builds warehouses, she once told me, over martinis and a missed rent payment. I build a life. That life was made of fragile credit, lease status, and endless distractions wrapped in designer labels. Always one crisis away from collapse. 2 weeks after the funeral, a closed casket affair in the rain, no choir, no eulogies, the will was read in a room that smelled like lemon polish and dead money. Leather chairs, dim lights, a sense of weight pressing on your lungs. My mother wore a black sheath dress like she was auditioning for a role she didn't believe in. Ashley dabbed her eyes before anything was even said. Matthew stared at the table. The lawyer, Nicholas, opened the folder like he was lighting a fuse. To my granddaughter, Richard. The words were sharp, clean, final. I leave the remainder of my estate, including all remaining shares in Vance Materials, investment accounts, property holdings, and personal effects. Silence hit like a dropped hammer. This is a joke, my mother snapped, standing so fast her chair shrieked backward. Her voice cracked. Her hands were shaking. He was confused. Read it again. I've read it 3 times, Nicholas replied, calm as steel. He was quite deliberate. Ashley gasped, small and theatrical. He loved all of us, she whispered, looking to no one. He wouldn't play favorites. Matthew just rubbed his palms together, over and over, like trying to scrub away a stain. My mother whispered, this isn't real. But it was. He'd made me the sole heir. Every nail, every truck, every decision. Me, not them. And I didn't know if I felt proud or terrified. Maybe both. All I knew was this, they weren't going to take it from me. Not this time. It started in the rain-streaked parking lot, beneath a flickering street lamp behind the law office. The kind of light that made everything feel vaguely haunted. My mother stepped out from behind her leased SUV like she'd been waiting, rehearsing, perfecting the script. Her heels clicked slowly across the pavement. Just sign it over. she said softly, like she was offering mercy. I'll make sure it's handled fairly. Everyone gets a piece. No drama. I didn't speak. Not yet. The words had to land like bricks, not feathers. I need time to think. She tilted her head, amused almost. You don't need time. You need to remember who you are. This isn't yours, Richard. It's ours. It always was. No, I said, calm, cold. It's not. Grandpa didn't think so. Her face twitched just once. But it was enough. He was confused, she said. You isolated him. Kept him dependent. He wasn't well. But he had been. Sharp as cut glass. I remembered every minute of that final conversation. The bookshelves lined with binders and ledgers, the scent of pipe smoke soaked into the old wool of his sleeves. They're going to hate this, he said, pouring bourbon into a chipped glass. But I didn't build this for people who treat it like a prize. I built it for someone who understands cost. You understand it, don't you? It wasn't affection. It was a passing of the blade. A test. And now it was mine to wield. The messages started before midnight. First, Ashley. Please don't let this destroy us. We're still your family. Then my mother. You'll understand once you have children. Family comes first. And at 1:43 a.m. Matthew, why? 3 letters. That was all he could manage. By morning my voicemail pulsed like a wound. Familiar voices from long-forgotten cul-de-sacs. Women who used to bring lemon squares and passive aggression to PTA meetings. Richard, honey, I'm devastated. Your mother. She's always been so proud of you. This is just such a blow. Disappointment. That word echoed. 1,000 cuts dressed in concern. But none of them had ever stood in that warehouse with my grandfather at 5 a.m. while frost crept across the steel beams. They hadn't seen the way he corrected numbers with a pencil he'd chewed nearly in half, or how he insisted every payroll go out on time, even in the lean years. This wasn't something I took. It was something I earned. Every bit or inch. But family doesn't see merit. They see what's missing from their shopping list. 2 days later, Matthew appeared on my building's grainy security feed. Hunched, hooded, hands stuffed in pockets like he didn't know what to do with them. I buzzed him up. He didn't step inside when I opened the door. I'm not here to fight, he said, voice low, wrecked. Okay. He looked up. Red-rimmed eyes. Sleepless. She's spiraling. Already calling realtors. Says she has to refinance before you freeze the accounts. I blinked. I haven't frozen anything. She doesn't believe that. She thinks you're playing a long game. I didn't answer. He rubbed his neck, stepped back like my silence burned. I just thought you should know. She's planning something. I can feel it. Then he left. No goodbye. Just the shuffle of footsteps echoing down the hall. I stood in the doorway for a long time, staring at the faded welcome mat. Not sad. Not angry. Just hollowed out. The siege had begun. That night, Ryan came over with takeout in one hand and quiet understanding in the other. We sat cross-legged on the couch. I stirred my rice without eating. He didn't push. I want you to meet someone, he said eventually. Amy. Probate lawyer. Old friend. She doesn't pick fights. But she knows how to finish them. I didn't answer. Just nodded once, slow. The next morning I climbed 3 narrow flights above a florist shop and stepped into a sunlit office filled with ivy and the faint scent of lavender. No leather chairs. No intimidation. Just a woman who listened like it was her job because it was. When I finished, Amy leaned back, hands folded, eyes clear. You're in the middle of a guilt campaign, she said. They want you rattled. They want you questioning your own memory. But legally, you're covered. Every angle. I don't want a war, I said quietly. I just want peace. Then we plan for war, she said. So peace doesn't get bulldozed. She gave me a list. Document everything. Messages. Calls. Visits. No exceptions. And under no circumstances, no signatures. I agreed. Felt like enough. Until the next text came in. It was a photo. My mother at a high-end patio store. Grinning beneath mirrored sunglasses. Retail therapy through grief, she'd written. #self-care. 3 hours later. Richard, I can't afford the gas bill. Please help. It's so cold. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I walked to my desk, opened the drawer and pulled out a folder. Printer whirring, pages stacking one by one. It had begun, and I would not flinch. The message came like a commandment carved in frost. Sunday, 3 p.m. The house. Bring your paperwork. Let's finish this. No greeting. No signature. Just a line of text that landed like the click of a trigger. Amy read it in silence. She's calling the wolves, she said finally. This isn't a meeting. It's a trap. I didn't argue. I know. I should be there. No, I zipped my folder shut like sealing a wound. I need to do this alone. Amy didn't smile. Then I'll wait 2 blocks away. One text and I walked through the door. I didn't thank her. I just nodded. And went. At 2:59 p.m., I stepped out of the car and into the quiet rot of suburbia. The kind of stillness that feels like it's waiting for something to break. The shutters of my childhood home were shut tight. The porch swing moved slightly in the breeze, though there was no wind. The scent of gardenia perfume hung heavy in the air. She'd been out here, pacing, rehearsing, performing to no one. The door opened before I knocked. "Richard," she said, in a voice too bright for the weather. Still so punctual. She wore pearls and grief-like accessories, both ill-fitting. I followed her inside. The living room had been stripped of memory. The curtains drawn. Every cushion squared. The furniture rearranged to resemble a tribunal. A single chair waited for me in the center of the room, facing the rest. Ashley sat to the left, fingers digging into her kneecaps. Matthew to the right, his expression a blurred mixture of guilt and exhaustion. My stepfather lingered by the mantel, arms crossed, mouth tight. And the strangers were already seated. 2 men in the kind of suits that never wrinkled, with eyes like weathered stone and fingers resting on legal pads. Briefcases open. No greetings. No warmth. "This is Mr. Gary and Mr. Jonathan," my mother said, voice like a champagne cork. "They're here to help bring clarity to this unfortunate confusion." I said nothing. Just sat in the waiting chair and placed my leather folder across my lap like a shield. Coffee was offered. Of course. I declined. Mr. Gary spoke first, his tone gentle and predatory. "We understand this situation has put strain on your family. No one wants conflict, Richard. Just clarity. Your grandfather surely valued unity." "He valued competence," I said flatly. My mother gave a short, theatrical laugh. "Oh, sweetheart. No one's questioning the will. We're simply proposing a more equitable solution. Something Grandpa would have wanted if he'd had more time." "If he'd wanted that," I said, "he would have written it." Mr. Jonathan slid a stack of papers toward me like an offering. "This agreement allows you to retain a sizable portion of the estate, 20%. The rest is distributed to your family. Clean, private, civil." Ashley's voice trembled. "He loved all of us, Richard. You know that. He got confused." "No," I said. "You did." Matthew cleared his throat. "Mom says the bank's circling. That we might lose the house." I turned to him slowly. "Why?" I asked. "Did she bet it again? Or was this your plan all along, spend now, cry later?" My mother stiffened. But not with shock, with calculation. She was bracing. "Richard, if you force this through legal channels." "Don't," I interrupted. "Don't pretend this is about family. This is about control. And you lost it." Mr. Gary leaned forward, folding his hands. "You're aware claims of undue influence could delay probate for years. That's not a threat. It's a reality." There it was, soft menace dressed as reason. I placed my hand on the folder. Let the silence stretch. Then I spoke. "Let me return the favor. A little clarity." I pulled out a single document and laid it on the coffee table. A notarized copy of my grandfather's financial log, dated and signed. Loan, Sandray $30,000. Stated for Matthew's tuition. Learned later it was for a Caribbean cruise during her nervous exhaustion. My mother didn't blink. I pulled another page. An email thread. Grandpa's accountant asking about a deposit made to Kevin for business consulting. The deposit had been flagged. There was no business. Next, a social post from Ashley. Champaign Cabana, Scottsdale. Same weekend she claimed emergency dental surgery. to secure a $20,000 transfer. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't smile. I just laid out the evidence like bricks across a river. Enough to walk across and burn the bridge behind me. I looked at the lawyers. Still feel like drawing up agreements? Silence. Mr. Jonathan closed his briefcase. My mother stood suddenly, knocking over her chair in the process. "You smug little traitor," she hissed. I opened the last page. Her signature on a fake invoice for foundation repairs at a property she never owned. The money had vanished into spa treatments and a new wardrobe. I looked her in the eye for the first time in weeks. I'm not the one who broke this family. Nobody moved. And this time I didn't feel empty. I felt ready. "You've gone too far, Richard," my mother said, her voice trembling under the weight of her fury, digging through his journals like some scavenger, twisting his memory to poison us. I stared at her. Really looked. Not at the hair sprayed into place or the designer scarf carefully knotted at her throat, but at the cracks beneath it all, the desperation, the fear. The dwindling empire of manipulation she'd spent years building now burning to ash in her hands. "He wasn't confused," I said quietly. "He was tired. Of you. Of the games. And he wrote everything down because he knew you'd come for what wasn't yours." I reached into my folder and pulled out the final piece, a sealed envelope, its paper yellowed, edges softened by time. My name on the Kevin. His handwriting. For Richard. If they come for it. I didn't open it. I didn't have to. Across the room, the two advisors went still. Mr. Gary's knuckles whitened around his pen. Mr. Jonathan subtly shifted his legs like he was preparing to leave, one eye on the door. I turned to them. "You're not attorneys. Just enforcers with suits. You came here thinking I'd cave." Mr. Gary tried to recover. "Miss Allard, we were under the impression this would be a collaborative." "No, you weren't. You were told I was alone." I tilted my head slightly. "I'm not. My lawyer's been outside this whole time. And she's listening." That broke them. They stood in unison, briefcases snapping shut. "We'll take our leave," Jonathan said stiffly, avoiding my gaze. "Mrs. Vance, had we known legal counsel was he?" "She's bluffing," my mother snapped. "Try me," I said, locking eyes with her. The men left like smoke through a crack. The room held its breath. "This isn't over," my mother said. "Oh, it is," I replied. "You just haven't realized it yet." I turned to gather my documents, slowly, deliberately, like closing a case file on a dead suspect. "I'm not funding your lifestyle. I'm not signing over anything. You don't get to edit the past because you've run out of future. You ungrateful." "I owe him," I cut in, voice flat. "Not you." Then something unexpected happened. Matthew stood. And for the first time in years, he looked our mother in the eye. "I didn't know," he said quietly, "that you used me. Lied. Took money in my name." "You're confused," she said instantly. "You don't remember it right." "I do now." Ashley flinched. Matthew's fists curled at his sides. "You told me Richard was greedy. That she was trying to ruin us. But you've been bleeding this family dry for years and calling it love." "Matthew," she warned, her voice going sharp, mother as knife. He didn't budge. "I'm done." He turned to me. "Can I come with you?" I nodded. He crossed the room. Brian stepped forward, puffed up chest, clenched jaw, half a snarl on his lips. "You walk out that door, boy, and don't think you're ever coming back." I raised my phone. "I've been recording since I walked in." Brian stopped like he'd hit a wall of glass. I saw it all, the calculations behind his eyes, the sudden collapse of confidence. Then silence. We walked out. No shouting. No footsteps behind us. No one trying to stop us. Just a long, echoing quiet that sounded like the end of an era. Amy was waiting on the sidewalk, leaning against her car, arms crossed. She looked at Matthew, then me. That was fast. I shook my head. It was long overdue. She nodded and opened the passenger door. "He riding with you?" "Yeah," I said. "He's done taking orders." The house door slammed behind us like a final punctuation mark. The porch light flickered once, then went dark. And we never looked back. Matthew didn't say a word on the ride home. Not until we pulled into my apartment lot. Then quietly, did he know? About what? About Mom. About all of it. I stared through the windshield. Yeah. He knew. He just hoped we'd handle it better than this. Matthew nodded. Not sad. Not angry. Just stunned. Inside, he walked to the pull-out couch and sat like it had been waiting for him his entire life. "You can stay as long as you want," I said. But you're doing dishes. His mouth twitched into something almost like a smile. Deal. The next morning I returned to Grandpa's house. My house now. The rooms felt hollow, not haunted, but paused. Like they were waiting for something to begin again. In his study, the scent of cedar and ink still lingered. I opened the center drawer of his desk, found the old ledger, and turned to the back pages. There it was, a note I hadn't noticed before, scrawled like a final breath in the margin. Richard has what Sandra never did. Patience. Perspective. If she leads, the company survives. If she learns to trust, it might even thrive. I sat there a long time, listening to the silence. Later that day, Amy helped me file the ledger and envelope as part of the court record. Everything locked. Every door closed. We drafted the paperwork for Matthew, not a trust, not a favor. An offer. Strict. Specific. Dignified. When I got home, Matthew was reading one of Grandpa's old trade magazines, flipping pages like someone decoding a language they once knew. You still interested in architecture? I asked. He looked up, blinking. I don't know. Maybe? What about a job? Intern level. Long hours. You'll hate it most days. He grinned faintly. That sounds honest. Good. You're hired. He raised his mug in a toast. It was cold. Didn't matter. This wasn't about warmth. This was about rebuilding. Not what they left behind, but what we'd build from it. A year later, I unlocked the F. Kevin Gate Advanced Materials. Not as the quiet girl trailing behind her grandfather's shadow, but as the one who stepped into it and made it move. The sign was new. The bones of the place were not. Steel. Concrete. History. I didn't change the name, not out of nostalgia, but respect. You don't rename a scar. You just let it heal. Inside, the warehouse hummed with life again. Not the noise of old machines, but something leaner, smarter, breathing differently. Matthew oversees the eco division now, recycled composites, thermal steel, carbon capturing concrete. He's still learning, but he shows up early and stays late. He's becoming the version of himself that Grandpa once saw beneath the silence, steady, precise, quietly stubborn in all the right ways. Ashley sends the occasional message. Careful. Timed. Like tossing a pebble toward a frozen lake, unsure whether it will crack or hold. I reply. Briefly. Kindly. I leave the door unlatched, but I don't light a fire for her return. My mother vanished into another zip code 6 months ago. No forwarding address. No warnings. Just gone. And that's fine. Not every exit needs a witness. Some inheritances come dressed in cashmere and contracts. Others arrive in bruises and therapy bills and the discipline it takes not to return fire just because you finally can. Grandpa didn't give me a company out of affection. He gave me a test. And I passed it by not becoming any of them. By not torching the bridge or walking back across it. In one of his last journal entries, buried in the back of the binder beneath financial forecasts and penciled-out loan estimates, he wrote, Richard may not be thanked for doing what's right. But she'll sleep. And someday she'll lead without apology. He was right. I sleep. Not easily. But deeply. And I lead. Not to be liked, but to build something that lasts. The wealth he gave me wasn't locked in stocks or deeds. It lived in clarity. In knowing where the line is and not stepping over it, even when everything in you wants to. In understanding that blood doesn't always mean loyalty and legacy doesn't mean surrender. What I inherited was structure. Boundaries. A map through fire. And what I built from it was mine. Not a monument to him. Not a shrine to the past. Just a foundation steady enough to carry forward. And this time it won't crack.